Welcome to Archaya Radio, talks on full-spectrum decolonized yoga and tantra, as well as the allied Indian arts and sciences, indigenous wisdom, healing, and the path of personal and spiritual evolution. Archaya Foundation is a not-for-profit school founded and led by Yogacharini Maitreyi, who is a life guide on the path. Born and raised in the yogic culture of South India, she now resides in Vancouver, Canada, and leads programs online and in person for students worldwide. Join us for the online community satsang every Saturday at 9 a.m. Pacific, or learn more about Archaya's on-demand courses and our online 500-hour embodied expansion certification, where you can become a holistic coach, healer, trainer, and leader. Learn more at archaya.net. I'm excited that this is the second installment of our Decolonizing Dialogues. This is the fourth year we've done it. It's our fourth annual Decolonizing Dialogues, which is a collaboration between Banyan Books and Archaya Foundation. We're honoring June 21st, which is Canada's National Indigenous Peoples Day, and it's also the UN's International Day of Yoga. Our aim is to bridge India's indigenous yogic culture with the culture of the First Nations people here on Turtle Island, for the purpose of taking a look at ways to heal unhealthy colonial paradigms within us and in the culture at large. We acknowledge that these conversations are being broadcast from the traditional and unceded Coast Salish territories, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. If you missed it on Thursday, June 12th, you can go to Banyan's YouTube channel and watch the first installment of this year's Decolonizing Dialogues, which was Chief Reuben George of the Tsleil-Waututh Nation in conversation with Yogacharini Maitreyi, who's our guest today. Letting you know that Archaya Foundation is a registered not-for-profit in Canada and in India. We welcome your donations to support our small core team and programs. Visit archaya.net/donate. Also, most of Banyan's podcasts and event series are free, and Banyan welcomes your donations to keep these programs accessible for all. You can just click on the PayPal link in the show description below. Letting you know, towards the end of our conversation today with Yogacharini Maitreyi, we'll be taking questions from you, our live audience. So go ahead and keep them coming in the comments field on YouTube as we go through, and we'll get to as many of those as we can. Yogacharini Maitreyi is the founder of Archaya Foundation and a master teacher of India's indigenous and healing sciences with over 28 years of teaching experience worldwide. Maitreyi was born and raised in India, where she was immersed in the yogic life for over 4 decades through her grandfather and gurus. Since 1997 in India, Maitreyi has been given formal titles like Yogachemal or expert, Yogashiromani, Gem, and Yogacharini, or life guide. India was colonized by the British during her grandfather's time, and for over 200 years, yoga, Ayurveda, Indian martial arts, and other cultural practices were banned by colonial rule. Maitreyi's school, Archaya Foundation, is dedicated to reviving the deeper dimensions of these arts and sciences which have been watered down by mainstream appropriation. If you'd like to learn more about Maitreyi's work and her programs, like the online 500-hour self-awareness teacher training, which starts in November, you can visit archaya.net. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to my teacher, Yogacharini Maitreyi. Welcome, Maitreyi ji. Thank you for being here.
Namaste. Thank you for having me here, Ross. It's always wonderful to have these dialogues.
I'm really excited about this one today. Now, we're talking about healing the trauma of colonization. So I wanted to start by asking you, is there a specific kind of trauma that's associated with being colonized?
I would say the first thing that you see in a colonized people is the erosion of self-worth. And once you remove self-worth from a person or people, then it's easy to manipulate them. And we've seen that. Ross and I were traveling in India, and we saw how the white man was pedestaled, and Ross was getting preferential treatment everywhere he went.
Yeah, very true.
In the cities and even in the smaller towns. And we'd gone to this pilgrimage site. It was a site for Mother Mary. And in the middle of, this is before the Mass, there was a family that wanted their kid to have a photo taken with Ross, like he was some big celebrity. So this is what happens to people who've been colonized. They somehow think white skin is better. They barely know Ross, and yet, they want these photographs taken. So, and we saw that continually. Like, we were in a small town in Kerala, and there the name for the white person is Sahib. Sahib means master. So instead of Ross being wise, all he needed was to be white, not wise. So that's all was required for him to be the master, So it's interesting to see how it is seeped into this, especially the Indian culture, this sense of superiority of the white man. All because he discovered gunpowder. But there are so many other areas in which the Indian culture was so refined and so, I would say, advanced, and yet people don't see that, or they don't recognize the worth in themselves and their own culture. So this intrinsic worth, so the trauma shows up as this intrinsic worth being lost. And that's the sad part when a group of people are colonized. And it can also happen through religion. So as the white man came, there was also this religion that was enforced, where my religion is better than your religion. And if you see any Indian home, it is very inclusive, especially the Hindu culture. It's very inclusive. Oh, okay, we have different forms, but everything, the divine is one. So you'll have people having a photograph of Lakshmi Ma and Durga Ma, and then there'll be Mother Mary, there'll be Jesus. They're like, oh, these are all aspects. These are all just forms. The spirit is one. And yet that culture was indoctrinated into believing that my truth is the only truth. And that also can be a way of eroding one's self-worth. So there are many, many ways in which the self-worth was eroded, religion also being one. Yeah.
Right. You're talking about the Christian dogma as a way of oppressing the Indian culture.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Any dogma that believes their way is the only way is oppressive, and is so sure of it. That's the sad part. And then will not even flinch to, kill people around it, or torment people around it, is, very reflective of the arrogance inherent in colonization.
Right. No, I think people that live in North America might be a little bit familiar. Hopefully people are getting more and more familiar with how the culture of the indigenous people here on Turtle Island was suppressed. I think because of how many people are in India, and how much they've proliferated and how popular yoga is, maybe a lot of people aren't aware of how the cultural practices and spiritual practices were suppressed by the British. Can you comment a little bit on that?
Yeah, so my grandfather was born not in free India, but in colonized India. And therefore, he was very vehement about speaking about it. For me, I was born in free India, so I don't have a charge around it. I didn't have to feel less than. Whereas he had to feel less than, because his Vedic culture, the yoga, the sciences, the Vedic mathematics, there's a very advanced Vedic mathematics, Ayurveda, Kalaripayattu, which is like the martial arts, all of them were banned. Obviously, the British saw it as a threat. They didn't want, warriors developed. So all of this was banned during the rule of the East India Company. They came in as traders, and then they took over, so this was banned by the British. So that was, I would say, annoying for many when it was commercialized. So the same in their minds, it was the white man who came, banned it. And then here there's a white population that has monetized it, diluted it and monetized it, has no respect for its original ethos, where you study for years and years and years, and then the guru gives you permission, or the acharya gives you permission to go teach. Whereas all that was removed. It was nicely packaged. Your teachers are trained in 2 months or maximum 6 months, and then they're out there, putting it in a studio setup, which again was not the original setup yoga was taught in. It was taught as a self-awareness practice. It was taught in a gurukula, where you go live with the guru, and you were looking at all your patterning, your physical, emotional, mental patterning, seeing if you were a reasonably decent human being, seeing if you were a worthy vehicle of all these sciences, and if you could pass it on to some extent in its pure form. And that was what was required of you. Whereas here it's just, like I said, neatly packaged. And so there was a charge with my grandfather about all of that that was going on. And my gurus too, they also, were very charged up about how yoga was being commercialized. So, and rightfully so. I have less of a charge because, like I said, I was born in free India, and, I didn't see the disparity as much. And I didn't have to experience the trauma of feeling less than.
Right. The trauma of feeling less than.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about, so this is maybe the core wound, we could say, for being colonized. What do you think is the core wound of the colonizer? Is it the same thing, just weaponized?
I would say yes, absolutely. It is feeling less than, but also there is a certain degree of lack of discipline and lack of restraint. Now, if we see the foundation of yoga, it is yama. And yama means restraint, restraining our survival instinct, restraining our animalistic nature to survive. I mean, animals are way better than some humans, so not to put down animals, but this instinct, to survive at any cost, this greed. So we have 5 yama with which we observe our lives. So one of them is ahimsa, or non-violence. So if there is this impulse to harm the other, there's always this othering, which is called dvaitam, this two-ness. It's not, advaita means like no two-ness, oneness. So
As in like the non-dual teaching,
non,
Advaita.
yes, absolutely. So when you look at this, I would say, aspect of survival, it's always, easier to survive if you other the people. Or this is bad, they're, people we don't understand, so they must be less than. And therefore, that instinct is being restrained by becoming conscious of ahimsa, or non-violence, and saying, no, I'm not going to other somebody and harm them. I'm going to create harmony instead of violence. So that is when we bring, awareness to this neocortex, this consciousness part of us. And therefore, that was the foundation of yoga, not asana, not pranayama. Of course, those are all important tools and techniques and ways of transforming self. But the foundation is contemplation of ourselves in relationship to ourselves and the world outside. And that contemplation of ourselves with ourselves is done with 5 key points. The first one being ahimsa, or non-violence, and saying, how am I being violent towards myself? By, again, maybe if that small town person contemplated, they could think and say, why do I want my kid to have a photograph with a white man? Am I less than? I'm teaching my kid, even at that age, a certain degree of violence, that he's not good enough. It is violence on a psychological level, maybe not on a physical level. And then we have other dictums, which means, not, I wouldn't call it a dictum, but other points of contemplation. That would be more accurate. So it would be like asteya, non-stealing. So am I stealing somebody's property? Am I stealing somebody's time? Am I stealing somebody's affection by not earning it? So all these aspects are contemplated. Then we have, non-truth. So again, we're contemplating non-truth. What is my truth? What is somebody else's truth? And is my truth better than somebody else's truth? And at different points in history, we know that truth is not standardized. Even in science, poor Galileo was jailed because he said, the sun is the center of our solar system, not the earth as the church kind of thought it was. Or, at certain points, people thought the earth was flat, and that's why they were afraid of traveling by sea, because they thought they'd fall off the edge of the earth. And we all know it's not true. That's no more a collective fear because of the fact, that the truth that we're not going to fall off the edge of the earth.
Unless you're a flat earther.
Okay, that's there. Yeah, we do have that part, So, but at least it's not a collective fear anymore when you think you're going to fall off the edge of the earth. So these collective truths also shape our consciousness. And when there is this colonizer, there's a collective truth in the colonizer's mind that I am better than, I know better, and of course it's fueled by greed, all, that mix there, fueled by violence, fueled by stealing, all the yama, which are there, the pancha yama or the 5 yama, and so these contemplation points are very, very important to say where, what is this impulse that is driving me, and can I restrain this impulse? So I think if it's not just a huge colonizer, but even us on a personal level, we can carry the seed of colonization by, in very insidious ways, we can perpetuate these, I would say, survival instincts and want to dominate a person or persons. So it's very important that we contemplate it with respect to ourselves as well.
Right. And that's why we're here tonight, really, is because to shift the collective, we all need to take personal responsibility for how we might be playing into that, even in subtle ways.
Absolutely.
So can we talk a little bit more about that in terms of the healing? Let's say I'm a white guy. So I come from, I'm 4th generation Canadian, born on Vancouver Island, Snuneymuxw territory. But I come from that lineage of people that came here uninvited by the First Nations. And so what do I need to look for in myself to see even subtle things about the colonizing mindset?
No, that's a great question. I would say the first thing, when I came here as a settler, I connected to the elders of the land. I connected to the land itself. I did ceremonies, and I was willing to listen. So I think these 3 simple principles, especially the one where we're willing to listen, will also support us in listening not only to life, but also these patterning that we might in unconscious ways kind of leak out. I'm saying leak because it's not a good thing, to leak out an unhealthy pattern. So it's leaking
Like
despite
subtle aggression or edginess, or like that.
Edginess. It could be all of that, where there's a certain impatience which can be masked as, I know better, and all of this can have its seed in generational superiority.
Right. Okay. So connecting with the indigenous people, being willing to listen, and a certain humility to listen, ask questions, and be curious.
Absolutely. So yes, the humility is very important,
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about healing? What does the word healing mean to you? If we're talking about healing the trauma of colonization, what is that word healing in terms of psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, energetically?
So for me, in yoga, according to the yogic principles and the practice of tantra, which is classical tantra that I've done, it is embodied wholeness. And to have that embodied wholeness, we're looking at all these aspects of ourselves. We're looking at the physical, we're looking at the energetic and the emotional, we're looking at the mental, we're looking at, aligning it with our wisdom field and our bliss fields, which are the cosmic fields. So we see we're not alone in this universe. So it is very empowering to know that we're not alone. and we have support, and we have this divine guidance, and yet we have a responsibility because of that as well, where we're not alone. We're not this individual. We are part of the collective. So that aspect, that knowing, that embodiment, and living our lives from that space, to me, is how a healed person looks.
Okay, so how do I, like, where do I start? Or is there a little practice maybe you could give us to try and help to tap into that wholeness right now?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when we want all these koshas, these bodies are called koshas. And with these koshas, we are integrating the koshas. Now, let's say our physical body is out of alignment with the emotional body, or out of alignment with the mental body. Then we can have an instance where our mind wants something, but the body is not willing to go along. Maybe the mind thinks, oh, I'll wake up tomorrow morning and I'll do the practice, or I'm not going to eat chocolate cake hereafter, whatever the mind thinks. The body is like, go to hell with that. I'm not going to listen to you. So if we want a good teamwork between the body, the emotions, and the mind, then this Jyoti Mudra is a wonderful practice. So let's sit comfortably. And let's bring our hands, the fingers touching. And then
Touching
place
the fingers.
Yeah, the fingers are touching. And then let's place our forearms on the thighs and eyes closed. And just be present to how your body's feeling. Jyoti means inner illumination. Jyoti also means light. And a mudra is a mystic or an energetic seal. It seals or moves energy in a particular pathway. So the Jyoti Mudra moves energy into the pathway of light or inner illumination and seals it. So we're literally creating new energetic and neural pathways by using a mudra. A simple face mudra, a hasta mudra is the Jyoti Mudra. Face mudra is a mukha mudra, can be a smile. So let's have a smita or a smile. This is very, very simple, and yet researchers will tell us that even faking a smile can release a lot of happy hormones in the brain. And now we'll observe our body with Karuna Sakshi Bhava. Karuna is actionable compassion. Sakshi Bhava is witnessing. So we can compassionately witness our body, starting with the toes, the soles, the feet, the ankles, the calves, the knees, the thighs. Feel a soft, gentle awareness move up your pelvis, bottom, abdomen, chest, lower, mid, upper back. shoulders, shoulder blades. Be present to your mudra, that is your fingers and how they're gently touching. Your palms, your forearms, elbows, upper arms. Your neck. Be aware of the point where your neck meets the shoulders. Be aware of your posture. Can you sit a bit taller, shoulders a bit more relaxed? Be aware of your face, starting with your chin, especially the tip of your chin, your jaws, your mouth, tip of the nose, your nose, eyes, eyelids, middle of your eyebrows, your forehead, ears, and head. Just be aware of your entire body, how your body is feeling, how you're holding your body. And just by bringing presence to the body, just by being aware of the body, we have the capacity to change and shift old behavioral patterns. The body is no more unconscious, and there's a certain consciousness that infiltrates old habits. And this is done with great compassion so that we can move from suffering in this lifetime to savoring our body, to savoring our breath. Let's just be aware of our breathing, simply observing the breath as it moves into the nostrils, into the windpipe, into the lungs. And just follow the breath out. How does it feel to rest in the breath? The mind may be restless. It might jump here and there, but gently bring it back to body. Gently bring it back to breath. And here again, we're anchoring the mind in the present by anchoring the mind in the breath. Now start to savor the breath. How does it feel to sip in the breath like you're sipping your favorite drink? And if you need a catharsis, you need to release, make sounds or sigh out. Those of you who are sensitized may start feeling prana or life force between your fingers or in other areas as well. Now visualize the Shiva Stambam, Shiva consciousness, Shiva light, Stambam pillar. And feel this pillar of light, this soft glow move through you, surrounding you. Knowing we're connected to this infinite stream of consciousness above into infinity, below into Mother Earth, into infinity. And see if your mind can savor all these aspects of yourself, the body, the breath, the subtle energy or prana, this pillar of light that we're part of. And just stay with this awareness for a few more seconds. Shanti is peace. May there be peace within, peace outside of us, and also peace on all the forces that may act on us. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Take a moment once again to savor all of these aspects. The body, the breath, your energy, integrating all of them into one cohesive teamwork. Now gently rub your palms. Place them on the eyes. And this is done, this integration is done through Karuna Sakshi Bhava, Karuna actionable compassion, Sakshi Bhava witnessing. Where we're liberating ourselves from old dysfunctional patterns that create disharmony in us, in others, or in our environments. Now gently relax the palms and you can come back.
Thank you. You talked about the foundation being this Karuna Sakshi Bhava, this actionable, compassionate self-observation. What do I do if I'm observing myself and I notice, whether it's to do with feeling I've been colonized, or looking around the world and feeling upset or angry about the colonization or wars or all the crazy things going on, and I'm feeling this tension, this anger. I know this is very alive for so many people today.
Mm-hmm.
What do I do when I observe this anger, this tension, this grief for a lot of people? What am I supposed to do with that?
Yeah, the emotions are very, very powerful. And in yoga, we say that every emotion is a messenger. So it's not bad, it's actually good. It's a messenger to tell us something needs to be done. And sometimes the anger can be a messenger on a personal level. It could be boundaries, or on a global level, it could be asserting boundaries. So how do we redirect that? Yeah, we can't go and fight a war. I mean, none of us sitting in Canada want to go to a war zone and fight it. And yet it evokes a certain emotion in us. And therefore it can be transformed and used in a positive way. And there are many practices in yoga. One, to glean the message of this beautiful emotion, to say, okay, why am I feeling this? To sit with it, to understand it, to befriend it, to embrace it, and then to transform this energy. So there are many practices like the Hakara, where we're not kind of extinguishing the fire, but we are purifying the fire. So a purified fire is under control. And that's why we do homas in the Vedic ceremony, where it's, within that square, it's within a certain setup. It's not a fire that's running wild. It's not like the forest fires that cause a lot of destruction. And a man or woman or child, with unbridled fire, unbridled anger can be very, very destructive. We all know that. So that fire is honed, that fire is purified and used in a proper way. And that's why we do practices like the hakaras, we do practices like the hissing breath, where we breathe in and we hiss out the irritations. We take a deep breath and we diaphragmatically make the sound ha, which is the sound of the sun. It's the sound of Shiva. Shiva also means change. So the anger is telling us we are wanting change in a positive direction. And therefore, this diaphragm, which impacts the solar plexus, is supporting us in exerting our power for positive change. So that's the beauty of all these practices, which are not negating the emotion, they're not suppressing it, but neither are we allowed to misplace it. Now, many of us, because we're like upset with the world, we might just be a crabby person to be around friends. Poor friends, what do they do? But then they get together and they're like, oh, miserable to be around because something is happening in the world outside. So that obviously is not the solution, to dump it on the friends, but to do these practices and use that fire positively is a good way to go. And the grief is a big one. You did mention grief, and we've not been given enough, I would say, safe spaces where both men and women can grieve on a deep level. And that I feel is very, very, very important, because we're holding a lot of the illnesses, a lot of the misalignment of the koshas. For example, the physical body is misaligned with the emotional body, with the uh, mental body. When the emotional body gets clogged with unresolved emotions, especially grief. And that's why it's so important, almost to have it as a ritual. Maybe even watch a sad movie if that, kind of evokes that emotion, and to be able to sit with it and befriend it and actually give it space to release and see where this deep grief is coming from. And for that also, we have certain practices like the Ashoka Kriya. Shokam means sadness or grief. Ashoka means without grief. So as we do those practices, also we're tapping into the grief we're holding in the upper chest. Usually this is the area. Of course, there are other areas where we hold grief as well. But we do a lot of practices to release the grief as well. Again, not judging it, but seeing the message it brings. So all of these emotions, I would say, are very, very important aspects of our energetic systems that need to be embraced and need to be transformed for, I would say, healing.
Just a reminder to our live audience, in not too long, we'll be getting to some of your questions for Yogacharini Maitreyi. So please keep them coming in the comments field on YouTube, and we'll get to as many as we can. Earlier, I asked about what I need to do as someone who comes from a colonizer ancestry to try and heal and shift those patterns in myself. I'm curious if I'm coming from an ancestry or a present day situation where I identify with a culture that has been colonized in some way. What do you recommend I do to make sure that I can somehow heal that experience and not create more disharmony because of the trauma that I've experienced?
As a colonizer or as the colonized?
As
Sorry.
the colonized. As the
Colonized.
victim of colonization. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to give you the example of this couple who wanted you to take a photo with their child, they were passing on the sense that somehow, you were better. Not that you're not, but I'm joking. But they were passing on this messaging to that child that, oh, this stranger who is white, why were you the chosen one, among seas of people for them to come approach you and have this child take a photo because of your skin color. And therefore, if the colonized people can sit and see, okay, where is it that I've lost my self-worth? Is it because of my skin color? It's terrible in India, where, the one of the biggest sales is for creams like Fair and Lovely, where
Skin creams.
skin creams, yes, fairness creams. So you could see how, even right from the skin color, forget about everything else. Oh, the white man knows better. Or, the West has all the answers. The West is economically doing well. There are many, 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 many insidious ways, in which it creeps in to the psyche of human beings. But I'm talking right from the obvious in terms of the skin color, how you can observe it with these Fair and Lovely creams, where fairness, and this was never the case. Krishna was dark skinned, and his dark skin, has been, there's been a lot of poetry around it. Rama was dark skinned, Draupadi was dark skinned, and yet you'll find in some of the television serials, Draupadi, always a fair actress, will be cast. Unfortunately, they've forgotten that she was actually likened to having the same skin color as Krishna, and they're both beautiful. They were described as beautiful. But after the colonizer, somehow the white skin was superior. And you'll find that in a lot of ads, how this woman goes for a job interview. She's not confident. She puts Fair and Lovely, and then she gets the job interview. So basically, they're selling you confidence in a tube, with these Fair and Lovely, whatever, creams. So similarly, you'll find that even in the yoga world, when I was growing up, until 20 years ago, there was not a single yoga studio. I'm talking about a big city like Chennai, which is in the south of India. It's one of the 4 major metropolitan cities in India. There was not a single yoga studio. You had to go and study with a guru, or there would be like a small space which was connected to an ashram. For example, the Shivananda ashram was in Kerala, but you'll also have a small center where you could go study. It was not a yoga studio concept. But 20 years ago, what happened is one of them came to the West, obviously, and saw these yoga studios, and they positioned it as, oh, this is the Western yoga studio. So what came back to the cities was, this white man's idea of what yoga should be, unfortunately. And Ross also took some yoga classes at this place where some of them are even called diva yoga. So it's like a oxymoron. It's like this, a diva is somebody who is self-important and difficult to be around, and yoga, and I'm like, oh, diva yoga, okay, I mean, it sounds hip and it sounds posh. And Ross was saying, yeah, the teachers are like very hip and young, and they have good personalities, but the class itself is like terrible. I mean, I'm talking about in terms of the pacing, in terms of the groundedness, in terms of the structure. It's not great. And not to diss anybody or anything. It's just to understand how yoga has come one full circle, and it's been diluted so badly because even Indians are looking to the West to bring yoga back, which is very unfortunate. I was quite saddened when I heard that. I did even want to experience a class. I taught a class at another yoga studio, and Ross was trying out a few classes in some yoga studios. And, when he told me, I said, I'm not surprised, but yeah, I am disappointed. So you find this in the colonized people, that even their own culture, unfortunately, which is yoga, that is the birthplace of yoga, is they're not looking to their culture for answers, but they brought it from the West and said, oh, this is like the first Western yoga studio, in Chennai, unfortunately. Yeah, that's what's happening.
Yeah. Thank you for that. We've got some really nice questions coming in from the live audience, and I'd like to read some of those to you if you're ready for that.
Oh, yes, please.
Okay. So there's one here from that's along the lines of what you were just talking about. That's from Ardeen, who says, what are some subtle ways colonization still shows up in yoga studios and teacher trainings today?
Oh, not just subtle ways, in very obvious ways. For me, it's obvious. Maybe for somebody who's kind of steeped here, they wouldn't know the difference. So basically, I was teaching. I am a guest teacher and other yoga teacher training programs also, and speaking to cultural appreciation and the subtle bodies and all of that. And some of them shared that they didn't even realize that yoga was not a physical exercise, something as basic as that. That yoga in ancient India was not taught in yoga studios. That itself is a revelation for many in that teacher training. And I had to explain how, even in my generation, I had to go study. I'm 50. I just turned 50 now. So if you want to know generationally where I'm placed, I had to go and study with my teacher. I lived in my 20s. I lived with my teacher for many years. I served her. I wanted to study with a female teacher. There weren't that many during my time. And I wanted to stay with her, and absorb these principles. So that is how it was done traditionally. And the teacher would look at you and say, do you have enough capacity for self-awareness? Can you sit with yourself? Can you observe yourself with Karuna Sakshi Bhava and change those patterns that need to be changed? And that is what the teacher is looking for. Yes, the tools are there, the discipline is there. It was extremely disciplined. You wake up in the morning at 4:30, and there was a very hard system in place. It's not for everyone. That's not what I'm recommending. But there was a certain rigor, and there was not just rigor of doing the practice, but rigor of self-reflection that was expected from the student. So that whole system is now gone, or I would say is, fizzled off, where most yoga teachers are not studying in that kind of a system. They're in a yoga studio, and you can see right from the clothes that, or the importance given to the clothes one wears, to the structuring of the class, where it's so compartmentalized. Just to give you one subtle example, how it shows up in a yoga studio. You have yin yoga, and you have vinyasa yoga, you have this yoga, you have that yoga. So if you look at classical or traditional yoga, you're starting with the foundations. You're starting step by step. And then you're seeing, okay, what is required? So there will be some yin practices, there will be some yang practices, there will be some vinyasa practices. For those who don't know, yin is holding the postures for a long period of time. And sometimes it can be 2 minutes, sometimes it can be 3 minutes, so you can go deeper into your body. Vinyasa, so to place things in a particular order, is what vinyasa is. So you move from one posture to the other, and sometimes it's done really fast in the yoga studio setup. It's not necessarily fast, but that's what vinyasa, the brand, has become nowadays. So when you go to a vinyasa class, sometimes you call it a flow class. You're moving from one posture to the other pretty fast, and each of them placed in a specific manner, one after the other. That's what vinyasa means. And so you'll find that each of them have become compartmentalized without understanding the whole. And I always remember the story of the blind man and the elephant. I don't know how many of you, it's a very famous story in India, where these blind men go, and look at an elephant, and then one of them touches the feet, and he insists that an elephant is like a pillar. The other one touches the ear and insists the elephant is like a fan, and the other touches the tail. Says, no, an elephant is like a rope. I can guarantee that. And unfortunately, that's what's happening to yoga, where all these parts, people are like, oh, this is yoga, yin is yoga, this is, where they're holding on to the parts and not the whole of yoga. And again, like I said, it has become the practice, or it has become the physical practice, rather than the multidimensional practice or the self-awareness, which is the foundation of yoga, the self-awareness for the purpose of union. Yoga itself comes from the root word yuj, to yoke, to bind, to bring together. So if you're creating unity, if you're creating wholesomeness, if you're creating union, community, a holy communion, a wholesome communion, then that is the foundation of yoga. So where and how do we start there? How do we facilitate that is the whole aim of yoga. Unfortunately, that's not even there in the yoga studio yoga. It's like, let's go and get, our abs done and, our back done. Or, I'm not saying it doesn't have value. It has value. and yet it is so watered down to the point where its ethos is lost. And so, yeah, I can keep on listing many, just to read that.
Can I ask you, the ethos is lost.
Yeah.
What does that mean? And let's say I'm a yoga teacher who has done teacher trainings, a lot of credentials, but I have to acknowledge to myself, okay, I'm approaching it from more of a physical fitness approach. How do I, and I have a bit of like I've created an identity and an image for myself, a brand around that. How do I find a way to learn and instill what I'm doing with that yogic ethos from that place?
No, that's a great question. I think the first step is recognizing and having the humility to say, I'm not attached to this brand, that I can step back and see that I have a lot more to learn, or I've learned a very watered down version that's come to the West, and therefore I should go back to the roots. So it is a responsibility, I would say, of every person who's taken something from another culture to go back to the roots and to find those teachers who are teaching it in a traditional way. So, yeah, the first step is, again, like I said, the awareness itself and the capacity to listen and say, where is it that I need to shift from this, having this image that I've created of yoga to the essence of yoga. And now it's all image driven, as you're as good as your Instagram followers. That's basically what, unfortunately, yoga has become. And sometimes it's not even teachers who just treat it as physical. They have a physical practice and then they have this philosophy and they have this. It's all very disjointed, and somehow they think they're doing something very spiritual, despite the fact that their practice is not reflective of a harmonious practice. It is still a very hard practice with no emphasis given on agency and self awareness. So, the foundation in yoga is, when you're teaching someone, you have to give them agency to feel into their body and see what is right for their body. It is not a cookie cutter one for all. That's why when I teach my Arkaya classes, especially the drop in classes, we're always asking the person to figure, one is reconnect to their body through jati. Jati, again, is not taught in the West at all. It's always asana, posture, vinyasa, where there is a paring down, where there is connecting to the subtle, where you're just playing with the body in very, very gentle ways and saying, oh, this is what my body is ready for. Again, we're not hyper disciplining it. At the same time, we're not being lax with the body, but through movement, through conscious rhythmic movement, we're, one, tuning into our own inner rhythm, and two, this aspect of consciousness, we are releasing the trauma that is stored in the body. And that is possible very easily through simple practices like jati, which are very, very underestimated. People like all the advanced practices. So the image of this yoga teacher that you're talking about is somehow connected to how advanced postures he can teach or perform. He or she can perform. Unfortunately, in the West, I've seen that. So coming back to less is more can actually be very, not just uplifting, but very freeing for such a yoga person. And saying, my identity need not be tied up with the most complicated postures. Do your headstands and your handstands. That's not indicative of how advanced a yogi you are. And here again, the word yogi is also misappropriated. Where in India, nobody calls themselves a yogi because they go to a yoga studio with a yoga mat. You're not a yogi. An enlightened master is called a yogi there. But here, everybody with a yoga mat is a yogi. So all these words also have been appropriated, in many ways. Also in the yoga studio, coming back to that question, the colonizer, subtle ways of colonization is in a studio. It's even the pronunciation. I don't find any care taken in pronouncing mantra, which is unfortunate. Like, I wouldn't come and have the audacity to say I speak great English and then, mispronounce all the words in English. Something as simple as, thank you. I know there's thank you, and I know there is, table, there is a T and there is a TH. I know there is a thumb, and then I know there is a tank. but I wouldn't go around saying, oh, thank you, and then say, oh, I speak English well. And you'll find so many people who, in the Western world, the colonized.
You're talking about the word mantra
Yeah.
versus mantra.
Yeah. Something as simple as that. Or Shakti instead of Shakti. Shanti instead of Shanti. There's so many. Like, for example, there is this wonderful singer, nothing against her in terms of, when I, first came to Vancouver, everybody was like, you have to listen to her. She's wonderful. She's a wonderful voice, beautiful woman. And yet such a lazy, approach to pronunciation. So somebody played me the Asatoma mantra, Asatoma Satgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, which is, we are moving from untruth to truth, and tamas from darkness to light, mrityoma amritangamaya. So mrityu is like death, and we're going into immortality. So this movement, this mantra was so mispronounced. Every single word was mispronounced. Asatoma, satgamaya, everything was a hard T. Tamasoma, jyotirgamaya, mrityoma. I was like, oh my God, my ears are hurting. And yet these are the people making tons of money from a culture which they have taken so little time, to not just absorb, but they're also spreading this mispronunciation. And it's not like the English people cannot pronounce a thank you, or they know the difference in the English language. It's not like a new sound. It's just sheer laziness, in my opinion. And for me, that is very disheartening to see. And I've spoken about this to a few people, where one of, that teacher, Nirja, she's one of our visiting teachers, and she was very heartbroken, I would say, when she spoke to me, when she tried mentioning it to another person who was teaching kirtan, in terms of the simple pronunciation. And they just completely sidelined her. They, dismissed her. She's an Indian teacher, and this is a Western person doing all these kirtan classes, not kirtan. And these kirtan classes were done in a way where there was no emphasis on pronunciation. All she said was, oh, could you have somebody to teach you the pronunciation better? She was being nice about it. But of course, she was dismissed. And then she came and shared that with me. And, I was like, I feel bad for that. But that's how it is. People are not willing to listen.
And it doesn't just matter because of respect or not wanting to appropriate the culture or come from a colonial kind of extractive mindset. It also actually matters for the practitioner, doesn't it? Because Sanskrit is a vibrational science where the pronunciation is very significant.
100%. You said that right. And in the classes, I'm always speaking of this vibrational quality, and also where the tongue touches the palate. And as your tongue touches the palate, like there is a tha, there is a tha, there are two nas, there is a na and Ganesha. I'm not even saying go that precisely into your pronunciation, but there's value in that. If people want to learn, then there is great value in knowing where your tongue is touching the palate for a Ganesha. It's not to the front, it's right at the back. It's a Ganesha. And then when you do that, there is these pressure points, these certain points that are activated in the mouth, in the palate. So vibrationally, yes, but also a certain activation takes place as a result of where your tongue touches the palate. And that's very, very important. Also, there are some sounds that are very diaphragmatic. So there is a dha and there is a dha. So it's almost like a tabla. When you hit the tabla, dha, like your diaphragm is almost like a dha, and a gha. So it's beautiful to see how Sanskrit actually moves energy in your body. And that's why, for me, it's beautiful to learn that. And I feel they're missing out. Yeah, on one level, they're missing out. On another level, they're spreading this misinformation. So both, yeah.
Yeah. We're just coming close to our time. I think we can quickly cover one more audience question.
Sure.
There's one from Mira who says, what would a truly decolonized yoga culture look and feel like to you?
Oh, wow. Okay, it would feel like everybody's listening and going back to the roots, on every level. Like I said, all the things we discussed, in terms of the pronunciation, in terms of the pacing, in terms of giving the person agency, in terms of having self-awareness as the foundation, in terms of having Karuna Sakshi Bhava, where you're witnessing yourself with respect to the yama and niyama. So the foundations of yoga are yama, conscious restraint and conscious cultivation. So with all these aspects, if we can bring it back to its ethos and listening to the elders, the ones who have purified themselves, the ones who've done this practice for long periods of time. Now, I'm not talking about the pop gurus. Unfortunately, what people think they have a guru is not a guru. They look at some YouTube videos and, oh, this is my guru. And I was like, have you even met your guru? And they're like, no, I've just seen his YouTube videos. And I'm like, okay, I mean, that was not, original India for you.
Because the guru needs to know you to be able to shine a light on your unconscious patterns, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So there has to be a relationship, right? It's like a mentorship. So you can say, yeah, I read a book and I got mentored by a book, but that really doesn't cut it. You need this energy exchange that happens. So right from where, and how you qualify a guru as, to all the practices, being there to create harmony within, and you as a teacher giving agency to the person and seeing, this is what works for each person in all these ways. If there is a shift, then to me it will look like decolonized yoga. So, but like I said, there's lots. I don't want to go over time, but there's like so many layers to it, and talking about your multidimensional aspect. This is something which I keep saying again and again. If there's one thing schools can teach, it is about, telling children that they're not just the physical body, that they're multidimensional. They have an energy body, emotional body, mental body. So that itself will change one's perspective of oneself, so that I would say, is a decolonized yoga. So yeah, I'll stop there. I'm just looking at the time. So
Thank you, Maitreyi, for taking the time to share your wisdom. We've been speaking to Yogacharini Maitreyi. She's the founder of Archaya Foundation, which is a not-for-profit in Canada and India, a school that propagates the traditional, full-spectrum, decolonized teachings of yoga and tantra. Maitreyi, you have a teacher training that happens every 2 years. It's online, available to people anywhere in the world. Can you tell us a little bit about that before we go?
Yeah, so that is starting this November, and I mean, my guru would take only adhikarins, which means those who really want self-awareness, those who really want a deeper relationship to themselves. And this is done over a period of 2 years. It's done in a very light way. We're all householders, and we can't, dedicate hours and hours. So it's on the weekends, half a days, and mostly on Saturdays and a few Sundays as well. And all the allied sciences of yoga are also given importance. So I come from a tantric tradition, a classical tantric tradition, not as propagated in the West, or even in Eastern Bollywood movies, where sometimes it's misinterpreted as black magic there, and here it's hypersexualized. So I'm not talking about either tantra. I'm talking about tan, or the body, and tra, tool to transcend the limitations of the body. So to hone the body first and then transcend its limitations. So we're looking at yoga, tantra in its traditional way, and also having this relationship with different teachers from other allied traditions like Ayurveda, like Nada Yoga, the yoga of sound, understanding again, Shilpa Shastra, how somebody looks at a point and form and, sculpting. So right up to that, we have lots of other teachers. We have a bhakti teacher who comes and, teaches you just to sing, not the technicalities of Nada Yoga, just, to sing your heart out. So all these aspects are also integrated into the teachings. And it's a very step-by-step way where you naturally learn to teach. And there's a lot of guidance given to the person when they're teaching. I feel that's very important, missing in, teacher trainings where I've seen people have never been observed teaching a class. They finish the program and they're out. Here, there's a lot of importance given to the person teaching and senior teachers observing them, giving them corrections, in their right from their tone of voice to pacing to the cueing. That's very, very important. So yeah, so in a gist, that's happening in November, and people can always drop into the community class to get a feel of the traditional practices.
That's Saturdays at 9 a.m. online.
Yeah, and it is very gentle. The drop-in classes are quite gentle because it's a foundational practice. It's not a very hard practice. It's there to shift you into your parasympathetic. Yeah.
Maitreyi, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a pleasure and honor as always.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Ross. Yeah. And Banyan Books. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Archaya Radio with Yogacharini Maitreyi and friends. Don't forget to join us live online from anywhere in the world for the Archaya Community Satsang every Saturday at 9 a.m. Pacific. Connect with us and learn more about our on-demand courses and the live online Embodied Expansion certification. Visit archaya.net or find Archaya Foundation on Instagram and Facebook.